Mine over there. I'll get over there.
Shall we go?
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It is now, let's see here, 5 o'clock, and I'll call the Master Plan Committee meeting of Wednesday, June 18th, 2025 to order. This meeting has also been posted as a planning board meeting should 4 more planning board members be present, and I can elaborate on that if need be later in the meeting. So why don't we do attendance, roll call vote? So, Bob?
Bob and Eric.
Linda Brown.
Carol Gogolinsky.
Bob Ryan.
Meg Schlesman.
Mike Zwicker.
Margaret Bacon.
Gordon Eric.
John Charbonneau.
Dan Mascroft.
Ross Smith.
Rich Preston. Thank you. Anybody online here?
No.
All righty.
This email on.
Gotta reorganize.
I heard from Robert.
Robert.
You want
Yeah,
to
he's not going to be here tonight. All righty. So now, the next item is reorganization. I'm going to hand it to John Charbonneau.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll accept if anyone has nominations for chairperson of the Master Plan Committee. Does anyone have a motion to?
I would make a motion to nominate Richard Preston.
I'll second that.
Third that. Fourth.
Any discussion?
Does Richard Preston want the position?
It's at this time that he said I decline. So, we're waiting.
Speak now or hold your peace. All right. If there's no discussion, all in favor of Rich Preston continuing as the chairperson, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So at this time, I'll entertain nominations for vice chair.
Who's the vice chair now?
You.
I am.
She kept saying, no, I'm not.
I think I'd rather decline. I'm getting at the age now that I think I better decline.
Okay.
I'll nominate Bob Manera.
All right.
Bob's got more stuff on his plate.
I've got too much going on right now.
No.
Like, who
I'd
wants
rather have
that?
someone else do, I get quarterly reports, monthly reports.
And it's getting bigger all the time here.
I know.
I appreciate the offer, though.
Yeah.
Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Margaret Bacon,
Second?
vice chair.
You want to do it?
Do I hear a second?
Not much
I'll do
work.
it. I'll do it. Great.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you, Margaret.
Congratulations.
If you came in a little later, you would have been good.
If this thing.
You wanna come up front?
The last one, it'll outlive me.
No, that
Want
was
the
the
seat?
Is that the vice?
implementation
No.
It can be. Well, it is for selectmen, so.
part of it. Just
Sure.
a year.
Right-hand person now, you know?
Okay.
Nominated you.
Right, you're early.
You're in the seat. Makes it easy. All right, if you would,
That's all right.
please take a look at the minutes for May 21st. Linda's the de facto secretary, recording secretary.
Oh, yeah. I think I'm the only board that has a secretary. Oh, no, Open Space has Becky Cal, secretary. I'll still do it.
What?
Chair, vice chair, do we have a secretary in charge of position, or it's not?
I'm not sure. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
Well, I take the minutes for the board,
Yeah.
so I,
Not all boards have a clerk. Some just have a chair and a vice chair. It's up to the board.
mean, I'll still do the minutes. Don't have to appoint me.
Would you like to be?
Yeah, I'll still do it. That way I can write what I want. right?
Okay, and would the title be clerk
Make
or
sure everything's
secretary?
in there.
Clerk is usually.
Yeah, clerk.
Motion to appoint Linda as clerk.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
There you go, Linda.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But it's only for minutes. Well,
Oh, just you wait.
No pizza?
no,
No pizza?
no, it says clerk. Clerk doesn't do pizza, does it?
I was not at the last meeting, but I believe I was eventually excused.
You were.
From that.
So I was going to ask that be amended. So Meg did contact, it didn't trickle down to me
Were you excused before or after the meeting?
Before.
before, yeah.
Oh.
It got to the secretary, it didn't quite get to me.
Say that
It got
again?
to Jan, but didn't quite make it to
Jen.
me. Jen.
Oh, okay, I see.
Well,
All
I've been
right.
calling her Jan, that's why she looks at me funny.
Jennifer, I guess.
Jennifer.
All right, so I'll let Jen know, because she corrects. Excuse.
Number 3, I'd like to add quarterly reporting plus the monthly reimbursement request.
Was that stated at that meeting? 'Cause I only write what,
I don't know if it was stated, but if you want to correct that in this meeting going forward, there's
Well-
a monthly report reimbursement,
well, we'll wait till after,
and I worked with Emily on that.
and then I'll add it in our discussion.
To a certain
Yeah.
extent, because it was important that you drew the distinction between the monthly and the quarterly. I think it was discussed.
Well, I'll,
Three
review it.
monthlies made,
Yeah.
one quarterly.
Yeah, and
And
had a
the
lot of
next one
catch-up to
coming
do.
up
I
will
recall
be-
the
yeah.
conversation about catching up, yeah.
So monthly is not included in the quarterly.
No, quarterly is January, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December.
So the monthly reporting, though, you
Every month.
report to the
And it's not a
Grant
report,
issuing
it's a
authority?
It's a reimbursement request,
monthly?
because we get an invoice
Oh.
from CMRPC
Okay.
the first week of the following month, and I have to submit it prior to the 15th.
Well, I'll see what was said on the tape. I mean, you can restate it tonight.
See a typo on 5, possibly a typo.
Say that again?
On number 5, it says Citizen Aaron Sokrat. I think it's Aaron.
Oh,
Yeah, that was Mr. Sokrat.
Mr.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
I think it's Aaron.
Aaron?
Yes.
I believe so, yeah.
I didn't know that. Neighbor up the street.
Number 4 says Margaret hands out paperwork that include Beast Street stuff. Is there more of that paperwork available? It was absent last week. We still have some of copies.
Let's see if I got a copy, I'll give you mine.
I think you said you also had it, you could email it?
Yeah, I can email it,
That's
or
fine. Yeah.
If I could get a copy too, because I wasn't here.
And Meg, you
How
weren't
about-
here.
how about if
I got
just-
a copy.
Can
Oh,
I,
good.
can I
Thank
do a
you.
reply all to the latest email and just
Just add it.
attach it to that?
Yeah.
Sure.
It's all the
Okay, that's
page
what I'll do.
numbers.
Thank you.
No apostrophe in neighborhoods on item 6.
I was wondering about that, because spell check gave me like 3 different ways I could do it, so no apostrophe.
It just appears that way to me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't ask me, because my SAT scores don't reflect good English.
Did you go to college? Good in somehow, Bob.
Engineering, math.
Quick question regarding the Riverwalk handout. Would it be better if we posted it on the website or something, or do we want to do that at this time?
We could. John, is that something we can do?
Post on the website?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you could send
Maybe
it to
that'd be
John.
Send it to me and I can get it
Oh, okay.
posted.
All
Yeah.
right.
Perhaps we should wait on that until we have another meeting with Mr. Jackman.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay.
Sure. That's probably a good idea. Yeah.
So we good with the minutes?
So I'm back
Rush
to
it
emailing it out? Is that what I'm going to do?
You can, yeah. you
Oh,
can
email
them.
it. Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
So do we have a motion to approve as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
I'll second it.
Made by Bob, seconded by Carol. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, those abstaining, the ayes have it. So before we move on, I guess a bit of an explanation. So there are 3 members of the planning board that are full-time committee members, and a 4th one joined us last week. 4 makes a quorum. Meg wasn't here, so we didn't technically have a quorum, but could happen very easily.
4 makes a quorum of the planning.
Of the planning board. And if there's a quorum, we can't discuss, we can't have a meeting of the minds and discuss and come to any decision-making. Anybody as a quorum outside of a posted meeting. So what John offered to do, we talked about this at our planning board meeting, because some may want to come and join us and talk. And if they just sit and monitor and listen and maybe ask a question or two, it's not a problem. But if they engage actively, that's quite different. And you might remember the gentleman who joined us, Aaron, he was exuberant and very involved, and that can cross the line. So we just want to be sure that we meet all the requirements. So John has offered to do a permanent posting for us.
Yeah.
So that, if we happen to have 4 more, it's okay, but we'll just sort of announce that. Also, and I take responsibility for this, you all have the right to speak and recognize as a committee, but not someone who's a guest. Of course, we want to let people speak. If someone comes to talk to us, we'll let them talk to us, but they need to be recognized. And that wasn't happening. And I should have dealt with that a little differently. So there was no harm done, but in future, if someone's a guest, even if they're from the planning board, well, that's a good question, John. If we're posted as a planning board meeting, are they part of the committee and they become part of that, or are they still considered an
Not
audience?
necessarily, yeah, it's still part of the audience, it's just to cover us with the open meeting law. So,
Okay.
yeah, that person's still part of the audience, it doesn't make him part of the committee.
Okay, so it's part of the audience, they should be recognized before they speak. 'Cause it was quite an animated discussion, and the gentleman was animated right there with us. So speaking of guests, we have someone here. Would you like to address the committee, or
From
just?
CMRPC.
Oh, hello.
She will be addressing the committee.
Wonderful. Here we go. Any questions on anything we've discussed?
I got one question for John. 48-hour notice for this committee as well?
What's that?
A
Yes.
48-hour
Yes, all
so-
agendas for public meetings are
So
subject to the 48
basically, a
hours.
dual meeting is what you're
Correct.
proposing?
Yeah, joint meeting between the two boards, yeah.
All right, thank you. Just want to check with you, was there anything you wanted to chat about regarding the quarterly report? We good there?
We're good. Good
Okay.
for reporting, the big reports coming up, the quarterly.
All right. Thank you, Bob, again, for your help there. All right, Emily, so we'll pass it to you.
Right.
You have the floor.
Great. So just want to say great work on wrapping up the vision statement at the last meeting. I know that took us a few meetings and was kind of exhausting for this group, but don't worry, CMRPC will now be taking over all the drafting and everything. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate that, and I think it turned out great. I was really impressed. Was there anything we wanted to bring up regarding the vision statement, or do we still feel good about it after?
No, just keep.
Okay.
Why? It's not the first time, it looks amazing. Mince.
Okay, so
Douglas, just keep going.
So now we're diving into like chapter development. So how the next kind of few months are going to go is myself or Sam or another representative from CMRPC who are working on developing the chapters are going to come and speak about how like the key findings they've been kind of developing after going through the surveys really deeply, doing initial data collection, having conversations. So each meeting will have a specific chapter topic. So today we have population and housing we're going to be discussing. I know I said at the last meeting that we were going to do transportation, but with some scheduling conflicts, we had to swap those. So at the next meeting, that will be transportation. So I apologize for that. So I have some handouts of some summaries. Emily Thibault is here from CMRPC. She's been doing a lot of research into population and housing chapter. So she's just kind of walk through this document. We've come up with some like draft action items. So these are really like actionable like steps that will be recommended as part of the plan. So these are kind of, so the idea today is just to get your feedback, make sure we're on the right track before we write a whole chapter out. If there's anything we're missing in terms of, you know, kind of key themes that we've heard through the survey and workshops and everything, I want to hear that. I want to hear just, yeah, any feedback on the action items too, if any clarifications are needed. So yeah, this will be a great, you know, presentation, then we'll get into a discussion. So, I don't know, do you want to talk over here? Can we make space at the table?
Sure.
What is Emily's last name? Thibault?
Thibault. Thibault. Thank you.
B-A-U-O.
B-A-U-L-T, yeah. Thank you. All right. Pass those that way.
Sure do.
That way. All right. We ready to dive into population housing?
Why not?
All right. The handouts will be coming around.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with some key findings. Number one, community has concerns about overdevelopment. Residents want any development to be thoughtful and balanced with the preservation of important environmental resources.
Go that way.
Got your own?
Take a hand them all to Linda.
Do you want for Bob?
We'll let everyone get
Just one for Bob. Okay, the rest keep going. Oops.
Community or all? Someone back to me.
this community. So yeah, so when I say community, I'm talking about the Douglas.
Everybody's got them? Okay, there you go.
All right, we all set? Does everyone have a handout? Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just gonna restart just in case anyone missed that first one. It's very important. Number one, community has concerns about overdevelopment. Residents want any development to be thoughtful and balanced with the preservation of important environmental resources. Through surveys and workshops, the community has expressed concern for the type and pace of new residential development in Douglas. Families have chosen to live in this town for access to scenic views, trails, open space, clean air, and forests. With increased sprawling residential development patterns, there are fears that these important environmental resources will be lost forever. Current policies facilitate single-family home development, which has constituted 98% of issued residential permits since 1990. And these are some comments from the community survey. So survey comments indicate that forest and open space are invaluable assets to the town. I would rather see fewer houses built and maintain the land in Douglas. That is what we all live here for. Where do you think you will put these? I hate to see the trees and nature being destroyed by the building going on now. What would this do to the woods and its inhabitants?
I think it's real.
All right, I'll just, that's just a taste for you. And this image on the back shows the rate of development for towns in Massachusetts. And Douglas has one of the highest rates of development in the state. And some barriers and challenges are financial, the value of development and residential tax levy, as well as affordability challenges, limited supply, and the limited diversity of housing options. All All right, before we go to the next key finding, does anyone have any questions?
What does sprawling mean? Sprawl frontier?
So,
Kind of means.
Emily, do you want to explain the
Technical
graphic?
definition for sprawling frontier?
Yeah, typically when we're talking about sprawl, it's if there's, open space, preserved land that's used then for housing and kind of like, not just the house, but everything that goes with, any roads that need to be developed, taking down any trees, the yards, things like that. So that all kind of goes with sprawl. So even if you're not necessarily seeing like a huge number of houses, it's kind of all the land that goes with housing development. So that's why you're seeing probably a lot of land loss kind of in that area, especially if there's large lot sizes. That's counted as kind of being lost to sprawl because now it's being classified as residential versus what if it was like open space or forest before.
And also, Emily, I know that one of the core elements of smart growth that the state has been espousing for the past 20, 30 years has been promoting development where the infrastructure exists for it. So I think another part of sprawl is this development is happening where there's not infrastructure for it,
Right.
where there's not water, where there's not sewer, where there's not existing roads. Is that correct?
Yeah, and sprawling development is typically much more costly for the town because you have to travel so much further and add so many more roads to service a larger area than if the houses were a little bit closer together.
So the opposite or alternative to that would be rebuilding something that's already existing, like tear down and rebuild kind of thing, that would not be included?
Or more condensed development.
Cluster development.
Smaller
Yeah.
lots.
Okay,
Is there,
thank
is there a reason that Douglas is one of the fastest growing? Is it just because of land availability?
I would guess yes, probably.
Okay.
And also, I think what you're seeing is, I know we dealt with this in Rutland, is you had Worcester, then you have Holden, then you have Rutland. As houses develop in these communities, housing prices go up. So in other words, for someone to find affordable housing, they have to go farther and farther out because it raises the housing prices when housing development increases.
But I mean, like realistically though, if someone wants to buy a lot and build a house, I mean, there's really no authority or mechanism to prevent any of this anyways, right?
And that's the problem. Subdivision control laws, Mike will probably speak to this, with the planning board legally, when someone presents a residential subdivision where the lots meet zoning and the roadway is designed to town standards, legally, the planning board can't deny them.
Right.
So that's the issue with the laws, too.
And the reason I think it's growing so fast is there is land out here. There's a lot of private landowners. If you can't afford the taxes on the land, what are you going to do? You're going to sell it.
Right.
And that's that double-edged sword where you're being taxed to death on one hand, so they're forcing your hand to sell the land because you can't afford to keep the land. And that's the double-edged sword. So, I mean, unless somebody can come up with an idea, that's the way it's going to stay.
I thought the last time there was this big real estate boom back in 2008 or before the crash, if I remember correctly, didn't the building inspector limit the amount of building permits he would?
Yes, I was on the planning board then, and yes, that did happen.
Not a moratorium, but there was a
I
limit.
think you could only have like 13 in a subdivision or something, or you were limited to 6, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Was it
So long ago.
town-wide? Wasn't it town-wide?
Yes, yeah, it was
Yeah.
10
subdivisions.
buildings per year.
There was a
Yeah.
moratorium
But it
on subdivisions.
Right, but it wasn't 10 buildings for the whole town.
No,
That was
no.
10 buildings within one particular subdivision.
Yes.
And I think that the
It was
state...
only for like 5 years or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, because you got to be able to prove why you need these things, or the state is not going to allow it.
So we can say Douglas is Douglas.
That don't mean anything to the state.
That's right.
And I think it was because we needed a school too, and we just couldn't keep up with the...
Well, now we got
Right.
plenty of rooms in the school.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Rutland passed a moratorium before I got there. The problem is, the major developer in town caught wind of it, submitted a couple big subdivision plans, and locked himself into the zoning. So whatever moratorium or limitation got voted on by town meeting, he was exempted. So the developments that the town was looking to control that developer was exempted from, and that's the challenge, is as soon as developers hear that you're going to change a bylaw that's going to limit them, in they come with the applications to lock in the zoning.
So we have to time it just right, because I'm sure you have to give public notice and all that stuff, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, because no matter when you do it, somebody can just come in with a preliminary plan and just submitting that plan.
Right.
Application locks them in for 7 years.
Okay, wow.
So what are some options for reasonable permanent solutions?
Do we want to go through the other key findings
Yeah,
first, and then we can
okay,
look at the
sure.
action items? Okay. All right, so key finding number 2. Community shares concerns about housing affordability. Like most communities in Massachusetts, the cost of living has been drastically increasing in Douglas without a concurrent increase in income. Although the median household income in Douglas, $147,185, is significantly higher than the median household income in Massachusetts, just over $101,000. The increasing median sale price of single-family homes in recent years has still outpaced household income. Residents are concerned with the costs of housing, taxes, and utilities. According to survey results, question 4 on the survey, the top housing-related concerns for residents are the high cost of taxes and utilities and the high rents or purchase costs for homes. Survey comments indicate increasing concerns about affordability for both first-time homebuyers and long-time residents. I'll let you all skim through the survey comments on your own, but just to give you a couple, housing costs are a concern in general. I don't know how young couples or families can afford a reasonable home. We would like to sell our current home here, but I don't think we could afford to buy here. I'm concerned that individual owners of owner-occupied multifamilies have a burden of high utilities, i.e. tiered water rates by usage and no longer offering payment plans. I'm concerned that Douglas has built up with 700K plus homes. This just isn't within reach for the average blue-collar people. There's a few graphs on the next page that show the colorful, the orange and blue. The first one, they're both orange and blue. The first one shows what survey respondents are most concerned about. As you can see, the highest concern is with high costs of taxes and utilities, followed by the capacity of existing infrastructure to accommodate new development, followed by high rents or purchase costs of homes. The next graph shows the median single-family home price has increased substantially from $255,000 in 2010 to $537,000 in 2022. Meanwhile, the median household income has increased marginally during this period, contributing to a growing gap in affordability for purchasing a single-family home. You can see that the lines are getting further and further apart. Some barriers and challenges associated with this key finding are concerns with overdevelopment, infrastructure capacity, school capacity despite decreases in public school enrollment, as well as the 4.12% subsidized housing inventory, which is short of the 10% mandate under 40B. There's also no housing production plan and minimal planning capacity for housing. There's also a large minimum lot size, 20,000 square feet for VB, VR, RC1, and 90,000 square feet for RC2 and RA. And lack of diversity in housing types. 86% of homes are single family, an increase of 10% since 1998. All right, and I'm sure you all have some questions or comments about this key finding.
I'll say one on the barriers and challenges. I think it should be added there. A lot of it is also present code that's been mandated. We have stretch codes that you have to build by. You have garages that have to have electric plugs for electric cars that you don't even own. You have all these rules and regulations that put a burden on the builder. He can't build a small home because he can't make no money. So, yes, I understand what they're saying, but I think it's code and the laws that are being mandated is forcing the situation to happen this way. It's not that it's wanting to happen, but everybody's being forced to do it. And that should be there. That's the main deal, causing cost increases on all these properties.
You're absolutely right on that.
I mean, when you go building 2x4 walls, now you're mandated everything 2x6. You need certain codes and all kinds of tests done and everything else. And I understand it's for a purpose of making houses tighter and all that. But I know where my son builds houses, now they're concerned about mold because the houses are too tight. So you need to be running electric fans 24 hours a day to get the air out, to keep the house tight so you can heat it, but yet you're pumping the hot air outside. It's all these crazy and stupid laws and codes that are being mandated.
The other thing is, Mike, pretty much all the easy land to develop is gone. So there's wetlands, there's ledge, there's steep slopes. One of the subdivisions in Rutland I was talking about has 2 significant wetlands crossings that are allowed. And they're basically like bridges. They're huge bridges within these subdivisions. So in order to recover the cost of doing all this permitting and all this extra infrastructure, have to raise the price of the houses. And the cost of materials. Everything's gone up. So.
Just out of curiosity, how does our affordability gap compare to like towns?
Most of them are similar.
Okay, so it's not like ours is, I mean, if they try to look at a different town, they're not going to find anything different than what they're seeing in Douglas.
With the affordability,
yeah,
I would say, Emily probably can speak to that, but I would say generally they look very similar to this.
Okay.
I mean, that's been going on for decades now anyways. Every generation, I mean, I don't know how many, they calculate by annual income to the price of the house. Used to be, much less, but now, I mean, income hasn't gone up, and for someone making 80 grand to try, and all that's out there is 800 grand homes, that they'll never afford it. And plus, what do we think about the population? Like, it's going to be going down, really, realistically. I mean, I think that's pretty much inevitable anyways. So, I mean, I don't even see the demand for a lot of new development, to be honest, coming up forward soon.
Barriers and challenges, are we also facing the same as like towns, or is that something that is unique to Douglas as well?
There's more barriers in Douglas that are kind of unique, like the lack of a definition in the zoning code for multifamily. I think there are a lot of zoning changes that could be made that would quickly help address some barriers, like reducing minimum lot sizes, or allowing for even just missing middle housing, like duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes, and sort of refining the mixed use zoning. And then reducing parking minimums. There's lots of things, a lot of other towns struggle with those things too, but those could definitely be made in Douglas.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to control the macroeconomic conditions, cost of labor, cost of materials, all of that is going up. So trying to focus on what is in the town's capacity to control. And that might be, I don't think the town, as far as I know, has ever done a specific housing plan. So really coming up with a housing production plan or some kind of strategic plan. I don't think there's any kind of affordable housing committee. I think it's something that hasn't exactly been on the town government's, necessarily their radar to come up with a plan to address some of the issues. So that's something that other towns have started to address. They've gone out and actually, applied for certain funding programs. They've passed CPA. I know that did not pass here in the fall. So there's opportunities here, but it is a challenge, with just the general conditions of the country right now and just what it costs to
What was the
create
thing that you
housing.
said they passed that we didn't pass here?
Oh, sorry,
CPA.
Community Preservation
okay,
Act.
okay.
Yeah, so part of those funds can go towards affordable housing construction or vouchers for families, but the town doesn't have that resource at the moment.
Rutland tried and failed as well, and so did Leicester a couple of years ago. Both tried CPA and it failed significantly.
And the reason it failed, because everybody looked at it as an added tax.
Yep.
Right.
The concept was great, but we're saying no more taxes.
Well, especially when, like, for instance, I live in Woonsocket. My wife and I bought our house for $290,000 5-6 years ago. Our taxes went up because now it's assessed at $450. We haven't done anything to our house, yet now our taxes have gone up because of the houses around us.
Some of these increases have been recent. I think it was over COVID for some reason, because in Douglas, a handful of years ago, you could still get houses 200, under 200. They might be fixer-uppers.
Right.
They're out there, not anymore.
Right.
Prices have really gone up.
I have trouble getting a lot for 200 now.
Yeah, there's nothing under 3. It's a knockdown at 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
And you can see that on this chart here, that it really goes up around 2019-20.
So I think we're getting people from higher density areas coming out this way, buying up properties,
Looking for
raising the
space.
Because
prices.
they're looking for the space, looking for
Yeah.
a nice quiet place to
Finding
go.
number one,
That's right.
you want space.
Right. So, I mean,
That's why they're coming here.
And
if we're
then
going to take a
looking,
step back as a group, I mean, just looking at keep finding number 1 and number 2. Number 1, don't develop. Number 2, develop.
yeah.
Right.
Low income stuff, you know what I mean? So like, is it our responsibility as a committee to like set the goals? I mean, this is just information, this is just data. No,
Right.
it's up to us to interpret it and develop a plan and a goal to like try to parse through it and come up with a plan for the town, right? So, I mean, I don't know, like if I was just going to look at the data and say, oh my goodness, we have high costs of taxes and not much affordable housing, like are we going to now, do a bunch of builds of affordable housing and multifamily apartments and all that stuff because it's cheaper that way and can stuff a lot of people in here? Because
Yeah, but that's diminishing returns. The more houses you build, you don't get your dollar back.
No.
Right.
It's diminishing returns
Right.
for the services that are required to support that. You lose.
The other aspect of it is like Rutland's population has increased 91% since 1990. With these people who come from these other more dense areas, yeah, they move out here for the space, but then they say, wait a second, we have to drive 20 minutes to a supermarket. Okay, now people want a supermarket in
Right,
Rutland.
exactly.
It's like, okay, you moved out here for the open space, but now you're demanding all these other things that you had where you came from. So there's
And that's
that.
why they left.
Right.
Exactly, exactly.
So what direction do you go in? Because you have young people today who maybe make six-figure salaries, and they still have trouble affording a house. That's when you get into the moderate income, this low,
Right.
moderate income housing.
Right.
They still don't qualify. And we're losing ground because of the 40B. I mean, we're 4.12%. We're never going to make the 10% because every time we put a subdivision in, that number goes
Yep.
up. So we need to take a
How
closer
many
look
other
at that.
towns are below 10? A lot.
Most of them.
Most.
Most.
The only towns you see that are above 10% are the very dense communities in the cities. Even Worcester is struggling to stay above 10%, from what I understand. And that's the second highest city in
All right,
Massachusetts.
so that's not a black mark on us.
No.
We're like the others.
No. When I was in the town of Rochester, agricultural rural community down near Wareham, they were at 0.06%. And their attitude was, we don't care about the 10%. We'll take our chances because we like our character. And whatever the consequences are, we will face them.
The problem with not meeting that percentage, Bob, is that if we don't make the 10%, the state issues a permit under 40B, and that short circuits our zoning.
Well, they can. That leaves us open to 40B developments that...
To being trumped.
Yeah, exactly.
And we have two now. We have one that's being finished and one that's proposed.
Yep.
Now, if we reach 10%, can we deny a 40B?
That's
Yes.
right.
We can.
Yes. It gives you a safe haven.
There's other ways to do it, too. There are plans that can be made, a 5-year plan. Ours expired in 2014. If we revisited that and submitted to the state another 5-year plan, it'll help. You'd have to commit to building so many units a year, but it can prevent a 40B permit being issued by the state. And there's other things you can do, too. We don't have an active housing authority. And we need an active housing authority to look into these things further. I'm trying to think of the name of the plan. Is it APP or?
What's that?
It's something.
HPP.
HPP. We had one from 2009 to 2014, but it was never resubmitted. Most communities have one. If you have one, you're covered for 5 years.
I don't know how many. I'd hesitate to say most. Depends on the type of communities you're talking about, because once you have a housing production plan, it gives you a temporary safe haven, but then you have to produce a certain amount of affordable housing units per year to maintain that safe haven.
And if you look at the formula, which I have, you're only talking about 2 or 3 units a year, maybe.
And in that case, you're in control of what units are being
Yes.
produced.
And the flip side of that is, with no CPA, where does the town get to money? Where are you going to develop those units? And as everyone knows, it costs the town exponentially more than it does for the private sector to develop anything, because of prevailing wage and all that stuff. So it's more expensive for towns to develop housing than it is for the private sector to develop housing. So that's an obstacle for communities as well. And the other aspect is, other towns have talked about this. Do we want to start dedicating municipally owned land for housing when we might need a new town hall one day, when we may need a new so-and-so building one day? And when the day comes, where are we going to put that? So that
Can't the HPP be a public-private partnership? You can have private people build these
Most
units.
likely, I
They just want to
believe so.
see you have those units online every year.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the other way, you have to build more affordable housing to keep your ratio up. I mean, you either have to build that, or you have to take away all these single-family houses,
It's a
You never
moving
really
target.
take that.
It's a moving target, for sure.
So for every so many single-family homes and lots you develop, you have to build so many affordable housing units. I mean, to go from 4.12 up to 10 is obviously more than double what we already have. And,
That's the number I was going to ask John. Do you have that number readily available?
No, I'd have
4
to,
10?
see how many housing units we have, because it's based on a ratio of housing, market rate housing. So I don't have those numbers off the top of my head.
The state has the numbers?
Oh, no, I could get the numbers easily from the building. I just don't have them right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people, too, have a misconception about affordable housing, of what affordable housing really is. Probably most of the people that work for this town would qualify for affordable housing. Most of the people that we all rely upon to supply us with the things that we really need to keep our lives going qualify for that affordable housing. That's why you really do need to have those people in your town. And it's nice that our policemen can afford to live in our town, and that our highway workers can afford to live in our town so they can show up to plow the snow.
John, I know I had asked a question before about the ADUs. Is there a way to classify those as affordable?
It would have to go through the state, and then have to go through the same approval process, lottery process, things of that. So it's a fairly complex process, so.
Just to try to bring that percentage up.
That's been one criticism of Chapter 40B over the years, is that there are a lot of existing units that towns have that would likely qualify, but you'd have to go through this process to get them approved by the state and qualified by the state.
What we do not have is an updated inventory of low and moderate income housing. I bet we have more out there that meet the qualifications, but the state doesn't recognize it because it has to come from us.
And because you have certain aspects, like you do a lottery when a new unit becomes available, and you can give local preference, but those are the types of things you have to go through in order to have something qualify as a subsidized housing.
There are also rental units. If the rent is low enough, I think it would be qualified as moderate income housing also.
But again, you would have to go through the process of filing the paperwork with the state and going through all of that.
You'd have to have an inventory, an adequate inventory in town.
Right, but it would be more than that. It's more than that. It would have to go through a whole process, and I don't know how that would work for units that are already occupied. That's the thing.
So the state came up with this whole 40B idea, and then they create all these barriers in order to try to comply.
Yep.
Okay. And what's the penalty for not complying?
Basically, the town can't turn back a 40B project that comes forward before the town.
So a developer could build more densely. They
Yes.
can build a multifamily, apartment building in an area that's zoned as single family. That
Or
would be
even
called like a
industrial.
What's that?
Or even industrial. Yeah, they can
guess
put it
so.
on, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think where the 40B up on North Street was not zoned residential. I'm pretty sure that was not,
That is industrial.
yeah. But then from the other point of view, if you've gone up there to see that 40B, it's a darn nice place. I think any one of us would, well, probably not you because you want 100 acres, but most of us would enjoy living there.
Until they put an industry in there. Then you'll see.
Well, there's not going to be an industry in there because they took all the land.
Well, there's still some there.
I don't think there'll be any.
So it's still
Behind it.
qualifying for the 40B then,
Industrial.
on a
Yeah,
regular
yeah.
4-acre parcel, someone could come in and put a 40-unit building, I guess, if they
Or,
wanted
yeah,
to.
depending on that individual parcel and the limitations on that parcel.
They'd still have to qualify for like wetlands restrictions, all that
Correct.
environmental
Yeah, all
stuff,
of
but in
that.
terms
All
of
of those.
zoning, they could.
Setbacks,
But the developers know the rules about
Sewer and
40B
water,
better
sewer and
than
water.
most of the towns.
Well, I heard years ago, I've heard speculation that Chapter 40B was basically pushed through by lobbyists for the construction industry to bypass local zoning.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard.
it's effectively what happened.
Yeah.
So that was 2 findings. How many do we have?
Thanks, Bob.
finding number 3.
All right.
Really good at going off.
Number 3, there is growing demand for affordable, accessible housing that meets the needs of older residents. The population of Douglas is aging. According to data from the U.S. Census and American Community Survey, there was a significant increase in Douglas's population 55 years and older in the last decade. As of 2022, more than a third of the population is 55 years and older compared to 2010, which was 18%, and 2000, which was 14%. While the proportion of middle families, which is age 35 to 54, and children under age 19 are decreasing. The median age is currently 44.9 years, an increase from 34 years in 2000. And so this graph shows the light gray is the year 2000, the darker gray is 2010, and the purple is 2022. You can see for the older demographics, the purple is increasing in comparison to prior decades.
Do you need to classify 55 to 64 as near seniors? Are you rushing us? Come on. Oh, you're getting close.
And it gets there faster than you think.
Maybe approaching retirement.
Yeah. We can
like
make
that.
Approaching the golden years.
The survey comments also indicate that as residents approach retirement age, there are concerns about availability of housing that meets their needs. Just to read a few comments. Not sure if I can afford to stay in my home. I've been here for 34 years. Where will I go? I built my home here. Longtime residents who love the town should be able to stay as they age out of their larger homes. Assisted living through to the hospice care facility would be in great demand and would allow dignified end of life in a familiar setting. Residents have to have first priority. There's needs for more single floor housing for seniors. The community survey also provide insights into living preferences of older residents and support for senior housing options. The majority of respondents plan to retire in Douglas or are already retired and plan to remain living in Douglas. Survey responses also indicated some support for a retirement active living community in Douglas. About 45% selected desirable and 37% selected neutral. And 1/3 of survey respondents indicated interest in renovating the old grammar school to be used for housing for seniors, followed by the top selection, which was a community center, indicating housing need for this population. So the survey question 3, this chart shows Who plans to retire in Douglas? As you can see, most of the survey respondents do plan to retire in Douglas or are already retired. And some barriers and challenges include affordability and availability of options to downsize, availability of single floor, accessible homes for a growing senior population. All right. Open it up to questions and comments on that key finding.
Key comment you did not read was right at the top of that page, the lack of 55-plus community with single-floor house plans. And Mike just walked out at the inopportune time, because I was going to ask him, why did our 55 development get denied? Well, Rich, maybe you can address that, because you were on the planning board.
No, I don't recall.
One on southeast Maine?
Yeah, no, I don't recall.
Way down near the Burryville line.
Douglas Turnpike?
Well, that's me. That goes right by my house. Really?
The one that road is already in.
Oh, it's on South Street. It's
15
not
years.
96, isn't
Oh,
it?
yeah, I think it's
I think
South
that's more
Street.
about the,
Street.
it's more about the
South Street.
developer than it is about the type.
It's kind of,
Well, he got denied because he wanted to do 55 and he got denied.
Oh, Evergreen.
Evergreen.
That was several different
What-
things. That's been there for 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it just hasn't
Maybe not
been
quite that
developed.
long, but it's been there for a while.
Yeah.
I think some of the things were done wrong when they did the road. That was part of the
No,
problem.
it was, he wanted to do duplexes, from single home to duplexes, and he got denied.
Yeah.
I get denied on duplexes also, in a zone that, was allowed for duplexes, except that then they decided that they had to have, every duplex now needs a special permit. And because neighbors decided they didn't want a duplex near them, I get denied. And if I had gone to the state, I could have made a big stink as far as the grants and stuff that we'd gotten.
Yeah.
But seeing how you and I worked our tails off to get those grants, you worked for the grants and I worked for the economic development, I shut my mouth.
Wasn't there enough of 55 that was going to be developed near the Catholic Church, up the road that goes up?
There's
along-
some talk of that,
Yeah,
but I don't know if it's, how far it's gone.
okay.
Couldn't you kill two birds with one stone by doing an over 55 and low income to get your numbers up and provide the low income, and get the low income numbers up and provide 55 and over housing?
I think the senior housing does count as low-income housing now.
So, I mean, because like Woonsocket, they've got the towers and they've got all that kind of stuff for the seniors. And it's got it set up so that, not only that, but it's set up so if they need help, they've also got the help and all of that kind of stuff.
Could you ask John that question?
What's that?
Because he stepped out.
Killing two birds with one stone, putting up 55 and over housing would also get our numbers up for the low income, right?
It could, yeah, you could have an affordable 55-plus. Now, you would have to...
But there's a difference between affordable
Correct.
and low income. That's two different
Right.
amounts.
So the key is there, you have to set your zoning bylaws up for that, because when I was in Stoughton and we were rezoning the downtown, one of the benefits to the town in exchange for going up an extra story near the town center that was discussed was providing affordable units. The committee asked, can we restrict that to over 55? And we were told by the state, no, it has to be open to families, but you can definitely set up a situation where you can have senior affordable housing. You would have to set up some kind of overlay district. You'd have to have something in your zoning to do that, because normally when you do 40B housing, it has to be open to families and seniors alike. You can't discriminate against one group or the other. It has to be open.
I mean, some of the comments in here from previous sections was 55 people can't afford the houses, they're moving out of Douglas. So in response and support of Rebecca's statement, why don't we have more 55 housing?
Well, I had a discussion when
It's
in Rutland.
affordable. It's affordable.
I had a discussion, well, there's not enough money in it for the developers, is the short answer.
Right.
I had a discussion in Rutland with the main developer who's going to be reactivating a subdivision, and I asked him, I said, would you consider, not even senior housing, just duplexes? Duplex, and he says, no, there's not enough money in that, I'm going to do I'm going to do McMansions. There's not enough money in it for the developers, and
They're
that's
not going to build if they're not going to make a profit,
correct.
you know?
So,
Nobody does it with
and
a
I understand it's frustrating because all of these problems exist way above us, and we don't have any control of it, but yet towns are being asked to navigate and adjust for it, and how do you do that? You know, you go through the exercise of creating zoning, and then what if the developers don't want to build it because there's not enough profit in it for them? It's frustrating.
I think the new ADU law could help with that, because if there is a senior living in their primary home, could build an ADU on that same property.
Right.
They could move into that, sell their primary home, build whatever they meets their needs, but there's just so much conflict about what the ADU laws are right now, until that all gets fleshed out.
Well, the problem that arose when this came down in the fall is nobody I've talked to when I was in Rutland or none of the towns has any issue with single accessory dwelling units. We all understand that. The problem that arose was the allowance for multiple ADUs.
Yep.
Because now you're taking single-family zoning and you're telling people, oh, you can have, you know, it's allowed by special permit, but you can have multiple accessory dwelling units, attached, detached, and the fear was you're basically ruining the character of single-family zones. You're defeating the purpose of single-family zoning. From what I understand from town council, the bylaw that was passed by the town last year is going to have to be amended because the state got such pushback about the multiple ADUs, they backed off that now. So they gave a drop-dead date of February 2nd and pressured towns to pass this bylaw, and then they're like, oh, never mind.
Backed off.
Now you have to, now they backed off the multiples because not only that, but you've got building code issues because as soon as you get 3 units or more, it's a multifamily building, and now you're talking sprinklers and things like that. So they didn't consider those things before they put that forward. So now they're kind of backtracking on those things.
But if you just put in one ADU, it's not that much of a, it's still a problem, though, because you've got to be able to, the septic.
Yes.
So you can only have so many bedrooms on that septic, so that's a problem.
Well, you might have to upgrade the septic.
Right, and then the cost, you know, you're not bringing in one of these ADUs for under like 200 grand. That's about where you're going to be on
You
one.
might have to drill a new well.
Well, probably not a well. I think you'd be mostly all right with your wells. And even, what's interesting about septics is, and Margaret knows this, I mean, what, a 3-bedroom house is designed for 6 people living in it, right?
Correct.
And how these houses, everybody, they figure each bedroom has 2 people in it. The only, no, husband and wife, after that, those kids all have their own room, if you have kids. But it doesn't make any difference, if the bedrooms are there, that's what they're calling on the septic.
3-bedroom house, 2 people.
That's usually what happens.
And the cost of septic, the engineering is
Oh,
cost
yeah.
of the roof. You can't do it on the back of a McDonald's.
No, that's for sure. And then building it's gone through the roof too, so. And then just even the permits from the town are up a lot.
I think 5.1 megs unit, yeah.
Well,
Comment.
Yeah, I know.
I think those units will, the ADUs will help provide housing, could help provide housing for seniors and for young people.
Well, I've seen a lot of activity in those. I've got 6 of them going on right now, and it's for family members. Yeah, so.
It's not a bad thing.
No.
No, I think they're great, because we've had the in-law thing here for quite a few years, where you could have an ADU if it was an in-law, a relative.
My son is turning 23. He's a journeyman electrician in Rhode Island, and he calculated that he made $72,000 last year, and he can't afford to live on his own, making $72,000 in a year.
Yeah, right.
What are we doing?
He's got to stay with you.
No, he's staying with his mom. But, you know,
But, yeah.
it's frustrating. I feel for the younger people because they're making money. I mean, I wasn't making $72,000 a year, 23 years old.
No, right.
But yet they can't afford to live on their own. There's something wrong. There's something drastically wrong.
On that aspect, though, we were all there once. Back in the day, we were only making $9 an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the price of a house. If you want it bad enough, you go out and work 2 jobs and everything else, and you go for it.
I mean, my son's working 6 days a week. I mean, what more can you do? And I argued with Ken about this the other day. So All right, back when I bought my first house with my ex-wife, our combined income was around $150,000 a year. We bought a house in Taunton for $160,000 a year. If we had stayed together, right now, our combined income would be around 200, 210, increase of about $60,000. How much is that $160,000 house worth now?
Right.
Plus groceries have gone up exponentially. When everything goes up 300, 400%, salaries have not gone up 300, 400%. That's the problem right there. It's all the other things. It's insurances. It's, look, I'm glad I live in Rhode Island, because from what I understand, the utility costs in Massachusetts have skyrocketed.
Oh, yeah.
So all of these things combined, you know, all of a sudden your house, like I said, our taxes on our house went up without us doing a single thing. From $290 to $450. So all of these things that are out of your control happen. And so it's not as simple as that. It's a combination of things.
How are we working this into the chapter? I mean, just to kind of bring it back, because I think we got a lot to go through.
Yeah, we're looking for number 4.
Well, just back to affordable housing, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but, you know, when I graduated from college, I moved into a mobile home park, and that was a great starter home, and build up equity before then, but you don't, mobile home parks aren't allowed at all anymore, but it's a great, cheap place to start, you know. I don't know, Douglas wants to think about, you know, creating a mobile home park, but, you know, that's affordable housing.
I have a cousin who lives in a very nice one in North Connecticut. It's beautiful.
That's correct.
Unfortunately, I think what's killing kids is the rent. The rent is costing more than a mortgage. So you can't even be saving up for a down payment.
That's a big problem.
Because the rent is eating any of your savings. And never mind the fact that most kids have student loans up the wazoo and other types of costs. I think one of the biggest problems is you've got to deal with the rent issue before you can even get to the affordable housing issue.
Right.
And I can tell you as a landlord, the landlords are not getting rich.
No, I'm not.
They're hitting all the same thing that you're hitting with the taxes and the insurances.
Yeah, I'm
and
just saying,
everything
like,
else.
that's one of the problems.
So that's
is
why everything's so high.
The rent's eating the money, so you can't even put anything, you can't start.
All right, do we want to go to key finding 5, and then I really want to make sure we have time to get through some action items. So key finding 5, strong support for small and mid-sized detached homes and accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. The dominant housing type in Douglas is detached single-family homes, making up 86% of the total housing stock, according to the American Community Survey estimates. In terms of the number of bedrooms, 20% of units have 1 to 2 bedrooms, 55% have 3 bedrooms, and 25% have 4 or more bedrooms. Community members prioritize the quiet, private, small-town atmosphere of Douglas and prefer new housing development to reflect this character. And this chart shows the breakdown of the percentage of how many bedrooms per home. Household demographics are changing, indicating that preferred housing types may be different compared to previous decades. The average household size is 2.89 people per household. 35% of households have 1 or more children under age 18, a decrease from 46% in 2000. And nearly half of households have 1 or more people 60 years of age and over. About 19% of householders live alone. Of those, 10% are 65 years and over, an increase from 17% of single-person households in 2010. So we kind of already discussed this, but I think someone pointed out that a 3-bedroom home might not have 6 people in it, right? There could be 1 person living in a 3-bedroom home. So that's something that we saw in the community survey. People want smaller homes, maybe 1 or 2 bedrooms, maybe 3. Different households need different housing sizes, but there was a lot of support for accessory dwelling units as well.
So how has the average household size decreased? It says that demographics have changed, but what did it used to be? It's 2.89 now. What was it? How has that changed? Has it decreased?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I can look that up for you though.
I have a comment on that. It's, you know, you're saying 3 bedrooms. I have a 3-bedroom house, but it's a modular home. The bedrooms are very small. And
everyone
it's a
has
40 by
offices.
24, 1 story with a basement. To me, that's affordable. I mean, it still has 3 bedrooms, but
But everyone uses the
You
bedroom
don't-
as an
you can't
office these
say-
days, and another one as a gym.
I mean, the
some other thing,
McMansion
you know,
across
it's
the
got-
street
it's a
from
guest
me,
room.
I looked at them, and they're 3 bedrooms, but they're enormous,
Yeah. Good point.
Bedrooms.
Yeah.
you know? So there's a difference, you know, you're trying to say, oh, 3-bedroom, oh, it's a 3-bedroom. I got a 3-bedroom, but it's a tiny house.
So it says strong support for small and mid-sized houses. Is that like supposed to be like demand, the strong demand for small houses, or what does support mean in this context?
So in the community survey, on the next page, you can see the question asks all these different housing types. Which ones do you find desirable, neutral, or not desirable? And small to mid-sized single-family homes were rated as the most desirable. So 2/3 of respondents said those were desirable, in comparison to 7% that said the small to mid-sized single-family homes were not desirable. You can see large-scale apartments, 7 or more units, were on the bottom end of less desirable.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to know is we talk about changing the zoning in terms of lot sizes and things like that. Do towns have the option to get a little bit more finer than that by actually saying, like, there's a demand for ranch-style homes? My wife and I bought a ranch home because we realized stairs are not your friend as you get older. You know, we want everything on one level. Can towns go to the extent of kind of regulating the type of housing that goes on lots
I don't think so.
at all?
I don't think they'd want
I
to
wouldn't
start
think-
doing that.
no.
You know, and ranch homes are more expensive to build.
And they're very hard to meet the requirements now for the
energy
heating.
codes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the problem.
And getting back to Mike's point,
It's cheaper to go up than it is out.
Right,
So,
and
ranch home is-
it's very hard to meet the HERS rating on a ranch now.
I know, I went through it.
Yeah. I kind of struggle with all of this because it's one thing for the town to want to see 1- and 2-bedroom houses built.
Yeah.
Who's going to build them?
right? There you
You know,
go.
and how do you legislate, or even if you change the zoning bylaws, I don't see builders who can build McMansions building 1- and 2-bedroom houses.
It's difficult because the sense is that zoning bylaws will influence developers, but I don't think that's always true.
So you have to incentivize them, and
Yeah,
then, so
to
how do you incentivize them?
Higher density.
Higher density.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but
They have to be able to make a profit.
If you offer
Sure.
higher density, will it make up for the loss of income from selling the individual homes? Would it work financially?
It would.
You think? You give them much higher density, smaller units, 1,000
Right.
square feet,
I think
whatever.
you're talking very large developments to make
Right.
that profitable for them.
Well, how's
is
that 51
74%
plus
are opposed.
development,
Yeah.
1 or 2
Yeah.
2 bedrooms,
Yeah.
you know, on half-acre lot, 3/4 lot? I mean, you can put, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 in a cul-de-sac or something like that. I mean, that would kind of check a lot of boxes, I think.
The only way you,
Skip ahead to the action items, there is one action item. Might as well, we're already talking about it. So if you go to page 14, one of the action items is to adopt zoning that supports pocket neighborhoods of smaller scale. So this is where you're getting the more density of
Right.
smaller homes. They could be cottage-style houses where it's like around 1,000 square feet, maybe targeting, you know, households of 1 to 2 people. Maybe it has a loft or something if your kids or your grandkids are visiting. But you're getting, it's typically, I think, 6 to 12 of these types of homes, smaller homes around more of a courtyard style or a walkway or a community garden where you get that neighborhood feel, but you still get that single-family home kind of privacy that people really appreciate. So I've visited a development in Lancaster. I've seen examples, you know, in Concord. They're coming up and they're getting more popular, especially around the Northeast. So do you think this is something that would work in Douglas? Do you think this would be something that would be kind of welcomed and
Well, one of the drawbacks to this type of development is you probably have to be on town water and sewer.
Right.
Town water anyways, because trying to keep the offsets from septic and wells, all these little lots, you never do it this tight, you know?
That is tight.
It's a barrier.
It's a public utility.
Yeah.
And not only that, where the large parcels of land are to do it, the infrastructure and the roads to get to it.
Yeah, there's no water or sewer.
So you're going down cart paths to get to an area that has 100 homes, it doesn't work. And that's the hard part.
So from what I understand, Emily, Jen in Sutton proposed something like this and it got defeated. Do you know the details of that?
Went down in
Yeah.
flames
Yeah.
at town meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She
I-
got
I watched
got a lot of
beat up
pushback
pretty
on
badly.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where was that, Darling Lane?
Sutton,
Yeah, Sutton.
yeah.
So
Was it
passed or
Darling Lane?
didn't pass?
It might have been, well, I think that's something else you might be talking about.
No,
down
they
in
tried to
Darling Lane.
pass this, like, community
Yep.
housing areas
Right.
in town, like an overlay districts and stuff like
Cottage,
that.
cottage housing
Yeah,
or
I
something.
don't know
Yeah.
how much kind of community outreach she did around that, like really letting people know what exactly this would be. Yeah, we had a few workshops the past month because they're redoing their housing production plan, and we brought up this as a potential housing type, and people did not like it. They said you can't drive your car, like there's limited spaces for parking, so people didn't like the idea of not having a parking space, right next to their house or having a garage. So
Well,
there's
a
that style,
NIMBY
but again,
issue.
you don't have to necessarily move into it.
Right, exactly.
Maybe your kids want to move into
Well, that's the
something like
thing.
this.
We went through something similar in Stoughton where we wanted to make it a little bit more flexible for a mixed-use building in the downtown area, in the town center area. So we allowed off-site parking to an extent within a quarter mile, because that's usually the limit of walkability. Oh my God, some of the people at town meeting said, well, I would never walk a quarter mile from my parking spot to the apartment.
Oh my
Well, that's
God.
you.
You don't have to
But
buy one
someone
here.
might. Give them the option to do so. So in this situation like this, Mike, so obviously you have to worry about town water and sewer. Could a development like this all operate on one well?
Yeah, public water supply. And then that 40B they're proposing up there on the Southwest Road there. Now, what they have is something, they have town water, but they're talking about a big community septic system. Well, those can be problematic, because all it takes is one resident to dump a gallon of paint down the sewer, and that's the end of that thing, and I've seen it happen.
But if it's their own septic system, then
If
that's
If it's their own, but on something like this, you wouldn't be able to put a bunch of individuals. So
But could you do some kind of wastewater treatment for this, or would that be cost prohibitive?
That's what she's saying.
Yeah.
Well, you could do a big septic system for something like that, put it in that green space right in the middle. But you run into the problem, you got all these different homes dumping into that one system, and, initially it may work fine, but I see problems long-term,
You'd have to have a big HOA. Who's
Now
going to
you
pay
need an
for that?
association, now you need fees, now you need the revenues for all that.
Right.
Now it's not affordable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
You're
right.
paying for something
You can
somebody
still
else
meter
did.
it. You can meter the water and meter all that stuff. So
I mean,
no-
Emily, do we have case studies of other communities doing this? And it working out with their septic or sewage or whatever?
Yeah, I mean,
I think Berlin passed this,
developer
right?
in Lancaster, and he made it work. I can ask him more specific questions
That'd
about.
be great.
Yeah.
I think Hamilton also does that.
I think we have to keep an open mind and get creative here, because there's a need.
And
Moderate income housing and senior housing, we've got to make some concessions.
And the thing is, to the points I've heard tonight, there are no easy answers. I know there was land use reform proposed several years ago that, for instance, would have eliminated A&Rs, because I think Massachusetts is the only state in the country that still allows A&R lots, but it never happened. And so there has been attempts to reform land use in the past, but they've never been successful. So unfortunately, we're trying to adapt to situations above us that aren't imperfect. And it's a tough task. This is probably one of the most complicated elements, correct, of the entire master plan that a lot of towns do.
Did you have anything else for us?
Yeah, I do have some other action items I'd love to hear your feedback
Okay.
on. So number one is modify the zoning bylaws schedule of use regulations to clearly define which districts multifamily dwellings are permitted to be developed in. That's on page 11.
Thank you. Because people
Yeah.
were frantically flipping pages here.
Wait, sorry, so.
So the town's schedule of use regulations within the Douglas zoning bylaws do not clearly state which zoning districts permit the development of multifamily dwellings, while the dimensional regulations establish height and setback restrictions for multifamily dwellings in the village residential and village business districts. It is not clear whether multifamily housing development is a use that is allowed by right, special permit, or not permitted in any of the districts. To avoid confusion and potential issues with interested developers, this part of the town zoning bylaws should be amended.
And that is, from what I believe, for a town to become a housing choice community, that's one of the things, if you allow multifamily housing by right somewhere in your bylaws, because I did it for Stoughton. If Douglas became a housing choice community, that opens us up to funding, correctly, through the state to help us with housing. So I think there are 14 thresholds, and the town has to meet 7 of them, and I know that's one of them, is having multifamily housing allowed by right somewhere in your town. So if Douglas could chip away at those things, and there are other things like, producing, X amount of building permits each year for housing and things like that. If we meet those thresholds, and I'd have to look into how many of them we meet, we could eventually open ourselves up for funding sources. So that's something to think about too.
But John, aren't all single-family zoning going to become multifamily zoning with the ADU?
Not necessarily. Like I said, I think town council has told me that the state is backing off on that. Is backing off on the multiple ADUs.
Well, I just mean more than you have a single-family home, you're allowed by right to put an ADU somewhere there. Doesn't that become multifamily by definition?
No, 3 or more.
Oh, 3 or more?
Yes,
we're
and
calling
well,
it.
you reach 3 housing units as
Okay.
multifamily, 2 is a duplex, and that's under the same building code as single.
A single.
But there again, you go back on the other pages, that's not what the community wants.
Right.
The community wants, the reason everybody comes out here is you get at least your 2 acres of land for the most
Douglas is
part.
Douglas.
You have one house on that land, that's what everybody said they want to have. So here we are with the same dilemma. The public is stating one fact where, no, we don't want that stuff, but yet we still got to try to figure it out.
But I also see some people who are saying they're struggling to stay in this community. So to have housing options for them to transition to within the community is also something that has been expressed, I believe. So you even have comments that come back from the community that don't kind of conflict with each
Is
other.
that a tough call?
Yeah.
Well, I heard, I mean,
Yeah, it is.
didn't they
I
do?
think similar towns are having similar issues.
Oh, yeah.
Personally.
Well, psychologically, we have state forest, which is a third of the town.
Yes.
Over, yeah.
And people like that.
Right.
There'll never be a house in the state forest.
So how do you account for like the senior homes and all this stuff? I mean, I heard they did away with ladies' night because it's discriminating. But so how do we even have 55-plus community?
You can.
Doesn't age discrimination?
No, you can, certain towns, like, for instance, the town of Rentham has zoning districts that allow, overlay districts that allow over 55 housing. The town of Rainham has it as well. So I could look into different bylaws and how towns do it. You can set up zoning to promote something like that.
Yeah. It sounds like everyone would be in favor of that type of development.
I
But
agree
if we
with
have too much like condensed, like low income and affordable stuff, I mean, you're going to invite, those people, and I think the town is quite peaceful, quite nice, not a lot of crime and things like that, but if you develop those types of areas, then you'll be inviting that. I think just throughout Massachusetts, I mean, you have your high-density, big apartment buildings where it's cheaper to live, such as, Brockton and Lowell, and those areas, so, I mean, if you really want something cheap, I mean, you have to go to, like, those areas. I think Douglas is nice, and it's okay to be nice.
Well, and I think that's what's becoming more difficult. Growing up in North Smithfield, which is a bedroom community of Woonsocket and Providence. I loved, growing up in North Smithfield because I like the quiet, getting away from the city. So that's becoming challenging. It's definitely becoming more challenging with the sprawl and with the development pressures. You're absolutely right. I feel like bedroom communities are really getting threatened by a lot of what's been happening. And from a planning perspective, you need 3 different levels of communities. You need cities, you need suburbs, you need bedroom communities. If everything becomes homogeneous, then that's not a good thing. To your point, you're out of balance. Each type of community serves a role, and you absolutely need to try and maintain it.
We do not want to become an Auburn, Cambridge, Newton, Quincy.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right?
All right, we're ready to move to the next action item?
I just want to say one thing about this too. I think we were not necessarily saying multifamily needs to be allowed by right in any districts, although that would be great. It's just not clearly defined in the zoning right now.
Right.
Where you
It looks
can
like
and
it's
can't.
not, yeah, it looks like you cannot.
Copied that, and it's just not. It's laid out in the dimensional requirements. There's 2 districts where it mentions multifamily, but in the schedule of use regulations, it doesn't say anything about multifamily, which that was just going through the zoning, just flagged that. So.
Not to ask a dumb question, but number 2, two-family dwelling is not multifamily. Multi is
No, 3 or more.
Yeah.
2 family is not
So we need a 2A.
What's that? 2A, yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to
Yeah,
point that out,
does this
too.
actually mean, that are there any 3-family dwellings in Douglas? I mean, maybe there aren't because they aren't allowed, potentially.
There are.
Yeah, there are.
There are?
They
Maybe
could
they
be,
were built
they could
before
be
the zoning was-
pre-existing
Yes.
non-conforming.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's Haywood Landing?
What's that?
What's Haywood Landing? Is that multifamily?
Yeah.
That was a condominiums, yeah, that's a
There's
multifamily.
86 units in there.
Yeah,
40B project.
Well, the 40B project is just duplexes on, isn't it? North Bar, North Village.
I think they had a comprehensive permit for that development. Didn't they? Did I remember? Yeah.
That went through zoning, not planning.
so if it went through the ZBA, then yeah, it'd be a comprehensive permit in chapter 40B.
All right. We ready to go to the next one?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Develop a housing production plan to establish a proactive strategy to address the town's housing goals. We've talked about this a little bit, but a housing production plan are state-approved 5-year strategic plans to help communities plan for and create more diverse and affordable housing opportunities. Community residents are encouraged to be active participants in developing housing production plans, providing input through survey and public workshops. The housing production plan will help Douglas identify housing needs, barriers, and challenges associated with affordable housing development, and specific recommendations that will help the town work towards achieving the 10% affordable housing threshold as mandated under MGL Chapter 40B. Certified plans can also help communities achieve safe harbor status from undesired 40B development. Any questions on this? I feel like it's pretty straightforward.
That's kind of.
All right.
Isn't that kind of what this group is doing here, when it talks about input and surveys?
Yeah,
So
similar.
who puts together this housing production plan?
No, that's another question, is you could form a committee to work on your housing production plan. Again, that would be up to the town as far as
So you need another committee, and
potentially, yes.
then the committee would have to present it to a town meeting or something for approval?
No, I don't think it goes to town meeting.
Submit
planning
to
board.
Yeah,
the-
just
to the state,
planning board, yeah.
from here to the state. We had one for 5 years. It's supposed to be updated every 5 years. It expired in 2014.
So we already have one that could be
You
revised?
could piggyback. Mostly people update them. So we could see what's in that
Okay.
and modify it and maybe submit it. I'd hate to think it would be all too bureaucratic, John.
Well,
I mean,
I'm hesitant about that, because in order to go into a housing production plan, there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen as far as where, how are these units going to be produced, where are they going to go, what are the mechanisms, how are they going to be funded, because some towns have a housing trust. Some communities have a redevelopment authority, like Stoughton has a redevelopment authority that, can access funds. So there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. It's something that I don't think should be entered into lightly, because like I said, you have a temporary safe haven, but then it ends after a short time, and then you have to start producing units. So you really have to have a clear vision of the, when, where, how, where are these going to be, how are they going to be funded, what's it going to look like. So there's a lot that goes into it. So no, the bureaucracy isn't, the red tape isn't there, but there's just a lot of consideration that needs to go into it.
So we don't have a housing authority, and
Actually, we do.
It's a pseudo-housing authority, really.
what is the pseudo-housing authority?
Not really there.
It's a name only. I think there's, what, 2 or 3 members? They kind of not meet?
It's inactive, to be kind.
It's an inactive
Yeah.
group that is essentially a housing authority.
Yeah, most housing authorities are usually very active, but they have
Yeah.
public housing.
Yeah.
Town-owned, state-owned property. We don't, but there's still a lot they could do. They could be working on something like an HPP, a partner in that, if you would, and housing vouchers. There's a lot they can do, but it's not happening right now. Sorry, you have to be bold with this group.
All right. Action item 3, amend the accessory apartment zoning bylaw to align with the new MGL Chapter 40A definitions and laws on accessory dwelling units. So the Affordable Homes Act signed by Governor Maura Healey on August 6, 2024 included legislation that amended the State Zoning Act to redefine accessory dwelling units and eliminate certain restrictions. 40A has been amended to allow ADUs up to 900 square feet to be built by right in single-family zoning districts across the Commonwealth. Local zoning bylaws and ordinances cannot impose owner occupancy requirements, parking requirements in excess of 1 parking space per ADU, or special permit requirements. Municipalities may still impose reasonable restrictions and requirements for site plan review, Title V requirements, short-term rentals, and dimensional setbacks or heights of structures. Douglas should amend its zoning bylaws to ensure that local regulations on accessory apartments do not conflict with state requirements.
You already did that.
Check.
Yep.
Love that.
So that's
What was
good.
that? I missed that.
So we can cross off this one?
Yes, actually, we're going to have to revisit that.
Done.
Yeah, we're actually going to have to revisit that.
All right, action item 4. Establish a committee dedicated to addressing housing and affordability issues in Douglas. As of 2025, there is no committee, partnership, or formal group of residents explicitly committed to addressing the town's housing needs. Having a housing committee can be immensely useful in guiding the town's local housing goals by promoting policies and initiatives that support much-needed housing types, educating the public about housing issues and opportunities, collaborating with developers and stakeholders to implement housing projects, and much more. The format and mission of such a committee can vary depending on capacity and goals of the community.
Can this action item be combined with action item 2? With the housing production plan needs to be developed by a committee?
Yeah, you could have a housing production plan committee, and then once you have your housing production plan in place, you could turn it into a housing production plan implementation committee. And that would totally work. Just any kind of, it depends town to town, like what works for a community in terms of like the structure of some kind of group. Some have housing partnerships, some have a housing trust, and their board of trustees kind of acts as the mobilizer for housing initiatives. Some have an affordable housing committee where they've just focused on affordable housing, nothing else. So it really depends kind of what that would mean for Douglas, and in terms of having a group of, dedicated residents, people with experience in real estate, in government and planning, kind of getting together, informing the community about kind of different, because there's so much stuff coming down from the state, these ADU changes, and the MBTA communities, the state has really been proactive with housing. So just kind of seeing what would work for Douglas. So
It seems what Mr. Charbonneau was saying, that number 2 is kind of complex, whereas number 4 would be, or number 2 would be number 4 on steroids.
I don't think number 2 is too complex. You could get funding to hire CMRPC, and I could come back and help guide this process. You're not sick of me already. So it usually takes about a year and a half to develop a full plan, because you really want to get a lot of input from the community. You want to go to the boards and present the plan. So, and then a committee would be something that would meet maybe once a month, every couple months, quarterly, over whatever makes sense.
4 meetings over a year.
Yeah, could do that. It's better than nothing.
All right, next. Action item 5, establish a municipal affordable housing trust fund with an active board of trustees. So this is one of the forms that this could take that Emily was talking about. Under the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund Act, municipalities are enabled to collect funds for housing, segregate them out of the general budget into an affordable housing trust fund, and subsequently use these funds without returning to town meeting for approval. Additionally, trusts can own and manage real estate if they choose to. Funds from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund can be used to support the acquisition, development, or preservation of affordable housing units. The trust statute mandates that a board of trustees with a minimum of 5 members be created. There are a variety of ways to capitalize the fund, including negotiations with developers on proposed developments, tax title sales, donated funding or property, special fundraisers, grants, inclusionary zoning, cash in lieu of units, or allocations of the Community Preservation Act funds if passed. Possible types of assistance through an affordable housing trust fund include deferred payment loans, low or no interest amortizing loans, down payment and closing cost assistance for first-time home buyers, credit enhancements and mortgage insurance guarantees, matching funds for municipalities that sponsor affordable housing projects, Section 8 project-based vouchers, financial support for the construction of affordable homes by private developers, rehabilitate existing homes to convert to affordable housing, and preserve properties faced with expiring affordability restrictions. So these are possible options. You don't have to do all of them if you choose to establish that.
We shot that down.
I got one question. Second sentence, collect funds for housing. Where are we collecting these funds?
So there is a number of options. So this is not to be confused with CPA, which is like the added kind of like tax assessment. This is just a trust that if you had developer fees, if the town was to have an inclusionary zoning where a portion of the units either would be required to be affordable, or a developer, if they're building, you know, a set of 8 units, would have to donate a portion of their development cost to the town. Could be donations, they could own land. There's a number of different ways, but I think the important thing that stands out is this is not an added tax, but it's a way for the town to manage funds that are just dedicated to housing.
So I can tell you from experience, if you give an option for a developer to either develop affordable units or do a payment in lieu of developing those, they'll take the payment because it's less expensive.
Well, that's already in our bylaw.
Yeah. They'll take the payment. So, and they'll give that to the town, but then, you know, say it's $50,000 a unit. It costs the town way more than that to build an affordable unit. So that's again, part of the consideration is this really going to be effective?
We can send examples of other communities that have operated one of these and like kind of what they've done with their funds as well.
And it won't be part of the general budget from what I'm
It wouldn't
reading.
be taking, sorry, that might be a confusing sentence, but it wouldn't be taking funds out of the general.
Generating funds. It sounds like you'd be generating funds from other sources.
Yeah.
So it will
It wouldn't
not
be taking away
part
from schools or anything like that.
So it won't be part of the general budget.
Right.
Because next 2 years are going to be tight for budgets in this town.
All right. I'm going to skip over the pocket neighborhoods. We already discussed that one. These are some funding or technical assistance resources for implementation of these possible population and housing action items.
We don't need to read through them.
There's many listed. If you're interested, you can read through.
Yeah, if you're interested in how do we get this done, there are
Lots
opportunities
of
out
grant programs, lots of technical assistance available, and a few other opportunities possible to look into: leveraging partnership with the Metacomet Land Trust, diversifying the tax levy with commercial development that'll tie back into commercial development goals or economic development goals. And encouraging affordable ADUs. One example of a way Salem was granted the option to exempt the value of an ADU on a homeowner's property taxes, which enabled the landowner to develop it at a lower cost because they won't have to pay taxes on it later on. So that's, one way to maybe incentivize ADU development, considering the cost of developing ADUs. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question for Meg. On action item 6, the pocket neighborhoods, do you think developers would be interested in doing this, or is it cost prohibitive?
I think developers would be interested in doing it. It just really depends on the infrastructure costs. If you could do, and Margaret, you can speak to this more, but even if you could do shared septic systems between maybe 3 homes or 2 homes, each 2 homes has a shared septic to kind of limit the exposure and the liability of having a centralized type of septic. We just don't have the infrastructure in this town to make it viable for a lot of developers to do this kind of work. I think it's a really attractive proposition from a building. I think you could do it really well. I think you could make it look really nice. I think it would be good for first-time home buyers or college graduates or
empty
nesters, whatever. I think we're somewhat limited by our ability to make it affordable for developers from an infrastructure perspective.
Because if we could somehow solve that, I think that would be an interesting option for Douglas, and have it be kind of tasteful and.
Yes.
Could go into different types of prefabs,
Even
you
tiny
can make them
homes.
nice. And,
Tiny homes are
yeah,
catching on.
exactly.
I have a modular home.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, but I'd build a mobile home park.
On that aspect, I know in Auburn, they had a trailer park 55 and over. Right there, over 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to be 55 and over just to get in it. So it was well-kept, maintained,
Yeah, they're
nice.
easy to maintain, they're cheap to.
Do they have like one big septic with that, or is it
Well,
town?
Auburn, they were tied into sewer.
Yeah.
So that's the key.
I have a question for Margaret. Do you think there might be technologies out there that we're not aware of regarding centralized septic systems? If that's one of our big...
Well, you know what I run into, this is the problem, whether it's a shared system with 2 or 3 units, or even a big one. When somebody goes to sell their unit or whatever, and the system's failed, then he wants to sell, but he can't sell until that unit's replaced. And that's where the big problem comes in. You get everybody else, and, oh, I'm not paying for this, and they don't, and that poor one guy is stuck paying for the whole thing. And that's why shared systems, we try to stay away from, because you run into that problem. I've seen it happen many times, and the poor one guy who's trying to sell his house, he'll just pay for the whole thing to get out,
Well, she should get an exemption, or...
How do you get an exemption? I mean, you can't sell it.
You're sharing you can't sell
They
it
can't
without
get
it.
money out of a rock. They don't want to
Is
pay
there
up.
any technology coming down the road that we're making, or you can create more condensed septic
Well, you
systems for
can
that
have
type of?
Sure, you can have little wastewater treatment facilities. I've seen those, remember, that's what you're talking, 300,000
Yeah, the
or
cost,
whatever.
right?
You need all sorts of pumps
Power
and
and
maintenance
pumps,
and, yeah.
So that, to me,
Tight
that action item is one of the most interesting.
Last resort,
that you presented.
last resort.
That I think is maybe worth exploring, if we can overcome some of those issues and get answers to them.
Yeah, find a place in Douglas that's on town sewer, I mean.
Yeah, that's the ideal
Yeah.
scenario.
Right behind, next to Schuster's house. All that woods there that goes all the way up to Franklin Street. That one person owns all that land. I mean, that's,
It's for sale.
it is.
Yeah, there's a couple of areas that are, sewers available that would work for something like this.
And it's not high and dry, but there's plenty of room for
Yeah.
little houses.
So if we could look into that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
We gotta watch our sewer capacity too
Yeah.
before we start adding on to our sewer treatment plant.
But it's the truth,
Question,
you know,
not
it's
for
all,
us, Bob Sullivan.
it all runs downhill, right, Bob?
All you need to know.
Well, thank you. You gave us a lot of food for thought here.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you feel like we're on the right track here for actionable things that we can include in the plan? Is there anything you kind of feel like we should dig a little deeper into? Zoning, funding, policies, types of housing?
The pocket neighborhood seems like there's some interest in exploring it further. As a planner, I'd like, I'd like to, with the planning board, I mean, do we look into areas where we could allow some multifamily housing if there's any interest? At least explore it to see if it's feasible anywhere.
I like the combination of these communities with the 55-plus
Yeah.
development somehow.
And there's a need for it.
And I think there should be some more discussion about the desire of where we would want the town to go. Like, do we want all the multifamilies, apartment buildings, and affordable this and that and the other thing? And as far as all this funding, I mean, is this all funded through our state income tax? Is that where this is coming from? It's got to come from somewhere. So we're effectively kind of paying for it already and just kind of like not taking advantage of it. But, you also kind of, it's like, feels like you're making a deal with the devil too, because they're, but you're just kind of feeding the monster at the same time. So
It's quite an obstacle
I think there
for
should
us.
be some more discussion about that.
I'd like to consider adding an action item about exploring zoning options to encourage over 55 housing, particularly affordable over 55 housing.
Yeah.
Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All in favor?
Struggle.
Anybody else, any thoughts? Anything that jumps out you'd like to take a closer look at? I mean, I think we should take a close look at the HPP plan too. Just look into it a bit, see where it goes. Covered a lot of ground here. Anything? Yes. So next steps.
Yeah, so if you want, we can reserve maybe 10 or 15 minutes to kind of return to housing and population things. If you have any kind of lingering questions at the next meeting. Otherwise, then we're going to jump into transportation is the next topic. And Will be here to talk about transportation. He's got some data, charts, key findings, and draft action items as well. So this is kind of the format that the meetings throughout the summer will take.
I don't know, 15 minutes, that's tight for us.
So,
I
So I have a question for Emily and the committee. So it seems like, so are these elements like housing, we discussed at this meeting, is this like a one and done, never to return? Or can we go back to this chapter, have another meeting down the line to finalize housing, then to finalize transportation?
I think we all should have time to think about it, to read this through again. And
Digest it.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you planning on doing any of this to the planning board officially, at a planning board
Any of
meeting?
what?
Any of these action items?
Sure.
Getting their opinion?
Yeah, I would like, well, at this point, the planning board basically is going to have to approve the master plan.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of action items, stuff that I could follow up on coming out of the master plan on implementation, like some of the zoning things, like the over 55 housing, like the pocket neighborhoods. Those are things that I would take on and work on with the planning board coming out of the master plan to try and do implementation.
55 solves a lot of these concerns.
Yep.
Could I throw one request out there, if possible, for next meeting? Let's say go back 3 years. How many actual building permits have been pulled, and what were they pulled for? Single family? Were there any duplexes?
You know, new construction
What
building
actually,
permits?
like they're saying, there's massive growth. Okay, what is massive growth? Are we talking 15 houses a year? Are we talking 50? What number is going on for a year, say going back to the last 3, to get a general consensus of what is really happening? Or possible maybe a little bit further and have the actual numbers, because it's published in the yearly record on how many building permits have been pulled. But how many of those have actually been built? Because sometimes they're pulled and not built.
Well, just get the inspection reports. How many inspections have been completed?
Yeah, well, it gives an idea of what's really going on.
Also, how many have been actually bought versus how many
How
are,
many occupancy permits?
yeah.
That may be-
Could be, yeah, or something, for,
Because, did a builder put it up and now it's been sitting there vacant?
Right.
So the occupancy permits, that's the key.
or something.
I think it's a mixture of both.
Yeah, they all sell, you know
Yeah,
that.
I don't think
But just an
it's a-
idea on how
I
many
think that would be,
permits.
in my opinion, that'd be a lot of digging, really,
Yeah.
getting into the weeds. That would take a lot of time I think, I'd have to talk to Ken about that,
And they
but
might have the
I
numbers.
think just
Yeah.
building
Electronic
permit
permitting.
numbers
building permit numbers, I think
would
that's.
be, I think, a helpful idea of what's
Yeah.
really going on, you know?
Building permit numbers would be fairly quick, I think.
Yeah.
And the building permit would just have to be for a house, not for somebody putting an addition or a deck.
Well, there are foundation permits,
Okay.
so they're a foundation only, then they have to get other permits, and obviously
Electrical, mechanical.
there's electrical, plumbing, and
Well,
we
that could
talk
also be-
inspections, there are multiple inspections for
Yeah.
the same house. I went
But
on
occupancy is the
inspections last week with Ken, and he's just going to look at insulation, so that's why some of these other things might not, you have to really dig into the weeds on some of these other things, but the basic building permits would tell you the
Yeah,
story.
The assessor's office would be able to tell you how many houses came online.
Either that, too, yeah, just for a good idea.
Yeah.
Just to get a general
If we had an
feel.
addition.
We can
I
easily,
mean, we're talking about it,
Built.
it'd be nice to know, you know? To have an
Depending on
idea,
square
right now we don't.
footage,
Yep, and we couldn't go into the
Yeah,
addition
and if there's
until we
other
got
data
the
you want included in
Yep.
the actual plan too, just let us know and we'll do some
Yeah.
digging.
So John, are you going to talk to Ken about
Yeah, I'll
that?
talk to Ken,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, that'd be great.
Ken or Chris.
Yeah, I can email both of them on Monday and just
Yeah.
see what they have.
Any final thoughts, questions, comments for now?
Yeah, I mean-
Population and housing?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I mean, just given all the data here in the first half, it seems like we should receive all the data and then have a discussion about it and then come up with some of our own action items of what we want to do, so I like these suggestions, but it's like I don't want to necessarily just go wholesale all in on anything necessarily without us all talking as a group.
I think that's what
where we wanna
Emily was
go.
saying too, reserve some time at the next meeting to kind
Yeah, I
of,
think at the
if
next
you have
meeting, we'll kind
questions
of
or-
review any
questions,
sort of questions,
ideas.
things
yeah.
like that. And then Emily's going to be working on really crafting together the chapter too. So getting all of the data, charts, like the narrative, and then putting together some continue to draft action items. That'll probably be more like September, October. We'll revisit this section. Now we're kind of going through key findings, draft action items, but then once we get your input, make sure we're on the right track for all of these chapters, then we're really digging into all of the data and everything. And then you will all get the chapters probably 2 weeks in advance of each meeting. I can send out the schedule again, so it's a little more clear, but have a time to kind of review everything, and then we'll sit together in a committee meeting and just make sure we got everything.
Okay, so we can revisit it just somewhat?
Yeah, this
and
will
then-
be revisited again.
I've got it. Okay.
Can I make a wording suggestion on these action items?
Yeah.
Put the word explore before them, because sometimes we may
Okay.
look into things, but they may not be feasible. We may decide that it's not a good idea. So I've seen that in other master plans where it says explore or consider. As, explore the possibility of establishing a housing trust, blah, 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 blah. Explore modifying the zoning to allow over 55 housing. Because at the end of the day, we may look at it and say, no, this is just not going to work. So
Can't do it.
gives that.
I think all the recommendations are just that. It wasn't the last master plan, they're all recommendations, and the implementation committee can either act on them, or pass them on, or decide it was their moot.
Yeah, I'm worried about someone come back and saying, well, your master plan says you were going to do this,
Yeah.
and you didn't do it.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah, that is something we typically do in these plans, so I would agree with that. I think that's a safe thing to do.
Anything else for us, Emily? Or?
I don't think so. There was a item on the agenda about meeting schedule discussion for June 25th.
Yes, very important item. So I want to run that by the committee. We had a conflict, so we canceled or rescheduled April 30th to June 25th. So that's next Tuesday, and we'd be meeting back-to-back weeks. We meet once a month.
Not Tuesday.
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, excuse me. So I just wanted to run that by you, whether you still want to meet next week, if you feel it's necessary.
I would
Wanted
prefer not
minute.
to, because I don't think our chapter author will be even ready by next week, and it's summer, we're all doing things, so
Yeah.
I'm totally
On
fine.
a
not
Wednesday?
going.
But even like the planning board, we only meet once a month in
Yeah.
the summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's vacations and this and that.
So you're saying your transportation person will not be ready for next week?
No, but he will be ready for July. We're all still good for the July meeting.
Do you want a motion, Rich, to cancel?
Yeah, let's see.
I make a motion to cancel the June.
Hold on. I mean, I'm
got a
thinking.
second?
Let's do
Any
that.
discussion?
Let's do this. The motion would be to amend the master plan committee schedule by removing June 25th. Is that okay?
So moved.
Can we get a quorum for next week to maybe just review what we just talked about tonight? You know, if some of us want to come get a little bit deeper on the housing stuff, then, you know, I think the invitation should be there. If everyone's going to say no, then that's fine, but I would make myself
We're
available.
going to find out right now, Dan.
Oh, yeah?
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
It was second.
It was
I just
Bob.
seconded.
Okay.
What's-
Second by
To
Bob. Any further discussion?
Can I ask one thing?
Yep.
We're going to keep the July 16th meeting, right?
Yes,
Okay, that's, yeah.
And this is a cancel, not a reschedule.
that's right.
Correct.
All right. Yeah, no, I'm up for further discussion. I would like to discuss it more, what we talked about tonight, and dig a little deeper and actually have some action items that can be a little more specific and pointed. You know, if we have enough for a quorum, I'd make
I kind of
make it
agree
happen.
with Dan, because Emily wants 10 to 15 minutes. In our time, that's an hour to 2 hours. If you do the conversion properly.
Yeah.
It's fine with me.
Emily, can we be there?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Misery loves company.
Do you, though? You tell us.
So the transportation would be in July.
July anyways.
But this would just kind of further discussion on
Housing.
We just got our
Sure.
feet wet a little bit. You know,
Extended
but we have no
discussion.
resolution, no
Sure.
real plan, but
Would that be enough time to get the rest of the data that we're looking for?
I'm not sure about that, because obviously we're out tomorrow and Friday, so I'm not promising the data, but I agree that this stuff, this is one of the more complicated elements of the master plan.
This is transportation.
That's why I was concerned about doing a one and done. It's like, no, this needs a little bit more conversation.
And we don't need just 15 minutes. We can ask for as much time as we want next time, and we have a year, right? So we could, if you feel this deserves more time, we could spend the whole next meeting doing this. As far as I'm concerned, population and housing is huge.
yeah, I mean, as long as we had another time to revisit it and, you know, talk about it and discuss it, then
So-
I don't care when it happens, I
The other-
suppose.
So it's at the top of the agenda for the next meeting, Emily,
Yeah.
July.
for July.
But I do want time for if we have Will come.
Yes,
talk-
it's-
Because that's another
What kind of-
complicated element, so
Hmm.
I don't know about combining those two in the same
Yeah.
meeting. It's a
The
little bit
transportation
too much.
specialty for
Yeah.
transportation. And then if we have time, we'll get into this again, maybe, maybe not.
Get into a 2-hour meeting, you'll lose in half your people.
Where do they go?
We had a conversation about this today. I've done my share of planning board meetings getting home at 2 in the morning. Not productive whatsoever. You lose people after 90 minutes or so, you start to lose people.
It's
So,
brain sprawl.
yeah, there you go, brain sprawl.
So you're saying the transportation presentation really has to be done by July? Or can we push that down the road
It can be pushed.
and dedicate the next meeting
Yeah, maybe
to
push the
population and housing?
That's an option.
Push the
Still.
transportation up
Yeah.
one meeting and discuss this again.
Is your transportation guy like already lined up? Was he already kind of ready to go?
Yeah, but
I could just
he can get more time to
throw-
work on it then if we push it. So it's.
So, we have a motion, we have a second on the table.
Wait, can I,
Trying to say
can I-
something.
I have something to throw out there. I think like a lot of the other chapters are going to touch on topics that could help inform the housing chapter and like coming to like final decisions on things like if you think about how like housing changes could like be impacted by economic development changes and like maybe there's like some information and data that would come from the other chapters that would help give people more of like a clear answer about like the best way to move forward with things in the housing chapter. I think it might make sense to also hold off on like proposing a bunch of action items that may become less relevant over time as we dig deeper into the other chapters. That's just an idea though. I'm not,
Stay on
making a
topic
decision.
of transportation, July 6th.
And then we can revisit housing at a later date.
Recognizing
If that's the
housing
format, then-
reforms
Yeah.
every one of
Like
the
you said,
chapters.
it doesn't matter when it happens, as long as it happens. Okay.
I mean, so if we're going to do transportation, housing, and then next, go down the line, and then bring it all together at the end, in another 2 or 3 meetings at the end, and forget half of this stuff and try to remember, and then that's fine.
I was napping, where are we?
Yeah, exactly. No, we're all itching to get out of our chairs.
So what are we doing here?
So basically, I think there's a motion on the floor to cancel next week, pick up with transportation in July, and then revisit
And then
housing down
revisit
the road.
this? Yeah, I think all of them deserve the
Yes.
time they deserve.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. Are we ready? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those
Opposed.
abstaining? The ayes have it. So we'll not be meeting.
Meeting next week.
June 25th, our next meeting is July, date? Is that-
Transportation. That's what I said,
Yes.
okay.
All right. Emily, did you have anything else for us, or?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
I'm going to need folders back for Jen, so if everyone can pass them around, please.
Now, what's this thing? Walking.
Thank you.
Oh, I
just-
have that.
Oh, you
I
passed
found
that.
it
That's how she
online.
puts
It's
it back.
every.
Oh, great.
It was actually a tour.
So there was one,
Probably somewhere, there's a whole pile
Over there.
oh, no.
It just maybe had a historical society.
So there was, sorry,
Hey, the folder's stalled over there.
lost them. I lost them.
Pass them that way.
Oh,
There was one last agenda item, if I could, and it's one we tag on the end there in case we're looking for more to do, like to have an expanded discussion. And it was regarding, let's see here, services and facilities. So we don't need to do that, we don't need to go over that, but it's something to think about. As you know, when we were collecting all the data, we did a tour, and we spoke to department heads, and we went and took a look at highway department, fire, police, the municipal building, and all of them have space needs. So it's just a thought, we can revisit that later. These are huge capital items, and it's something the master plan is going to have to address, so.
That'll be under municipal facilities.
That's
Yeah,
a topic for August meeting.
yeah, so we're looking forward to your input and thoughts on that at that time. Does anyone have any?
Services and facilities is where we're also going to be talking about like the sewer system as well. And so like digging into the sewer system, we can actually get more of like a clear answer about like the capacity constraints.
The water and sewer.
Does anyone
Sewer
have-
is operating at about 50% capacity of the treatment plant. Water is
Right,
another,
noted.
water is another story. We're coming up on our permit for pulling out of the ground. And that's a 2-year permit to get it. That's a sizable permit.
How old is the quote-unquote new wastewater treatment plant? It's been on for a while, right?
It's been up for a while, 10, 15 years.
So it's only at 50%, I'm surprised. It's not
They
bad.
over-designed it for that purpose.
Yeah.
But you do have economic development buildings coming on, which are going to tap into that.
We got a warehouse that's empty at the moment.
It's empty
too.
right now,
That'll,
and another one on the block.
yep.
Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share with the committee?
One quickie. Last meeting, you said you're going to get a hold of the school to find out about the survey?
I did, and he said I'll try.
Okay.
Principal, and then I think school's ended, so
Yeah.
I don't.
That's fine. Just a point, that's all.
Try means no.
They're still there. The kids are not
They
there.
are?
They're still
Oh.
there.
But we want the kids.
Yeah.
You just want the results of the survey, right?
It was for the middle schoolers to take the survey.
Oh, to take it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Last day was yesterday.
They don't want to take any survey
Yeah.
until September 1st.
but do we have permission to post it online? We don't know. That was the question.
Oh, that was the second question. I mean, it doesn't give any personal information.
No,
There's
and there were no
information-
bad words or...
Yeah,
It's
there's
no
nothing
different than
saying,
an adult survey.
yeah. It's- all-
And it
all
doesn't
the
have any
results-
names.
It doesn't, it has no names, it's not
It's
saying,
de-identified.
Johnny who lives on this street is saying this, it's nothing like that, so.
No expletives?
hold
No,
on, check
not one.
that.
I read the whole thing, and there's not one. I was shocked.
Said kids in this
Ours was pretty bad
The
in the
adults were
beginning.
more spicy.
We raising.
So, John, what do you think about, we have our original survey, town-wide survey
I-
online.
I haven't, I haven't seen it, to be honest with you, I haven't looked at it.
It's just the kids saying what they would like to see, like a movie theater, more open space, more sidewalks.
So how do we get them to it? How do we?
But they already took it.
Okay.
They did, we just want to post it.
Oh, okay, yeah, so I'd have to look at, to tell you the truth, I haven't had a chance to look.
Can you send it, the results?
Yeah, of course.
That'd be great, because I think the kids would like to see it. You know, they put their effort
that's
into
fine.
it, if they want,
Yeah, of course.
yeah.
Would you just do the straight survey, or would you make it pretty like you did the adult?
Make it pretty. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Great.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Well, here is Mike
Michael?
Swicker's favorite.
Second, anybody?
Second.
By Bob, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.